Good morning, students. Welcome to chemistry class, chapter 6, physical and chemical changes. Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. It can be in the form of solids, liquids, or gases. When you look at an object, you are able to see many of its properties. Scientists classify matter based on its chemical and physical properties that have been observed and tested. Let's see the properties of substance. Classification of properties. Physical property and chemical property. A physical property is a characteristic that can be observed or measured without changing the composition of the sample or substance. A chemical property describes the ability of a substance to undergo a specific chemical change. Are these properties determined without changing the composition or identity of the substance? If your answer is yes, then they are physical properties. Further, it is classified into extensive physical property and intensive physical property. If the physical property depends on the amount of substance, then it is called extensive physical property. If the physical property does not depend on the amount of substance, then it is intensive physical property. Let's look into the difference between intensive and extensive physical properties. An intensive property is a property of matter that does not change as the amount of matter changes, whereas extensive physical property is one that depends on sample size. The intensive physical property is a bulk property, which means it's a physical property that is not dependent on size or mass of the sample. So it is independent property. Whereas extensive physical property is a dependent property. The intensive physical property, size does not change. It can be computed and can be easily identified. Whereas extensive physical property, the size changes, it can be computed and cannot be easily identified. Some of the intensive physical properties are color, boiling point, state of matter, melting point, odor, temperature, luster, hardness, ductility, and malleability. Some of the extensive physical properties are mass, volume, length, shape, size. What is a change? A change is an act or process through which something becomes different. What are the different types of changes? Physical change, chemical change, and nuclear change. In this lesson, you are going to learn about physical and chemical changes. Let's learn in detail about physical change. A change in which a substance undergoes a change in its physical properties is called physical change. Physical change is reversible. No new substance is formed in a physical change. Some examples of physical change: boiling of water, cutting of vegetables, drying clothes, breaking of glass, and heating a metal. Activity 1. Cut a piece of paper into 4 square pieces. Cut each square piece further into 4 square pieces. Lay these pieces on the floor or a table so that the pieces acquire the shape of the original piece of paper. Obviously, you cannot join the pieces back to make the original piece. But is there a change in the property of the paper? No. The paper changes in size. So it's a physical change. Activity 2. Crush a small piece of chalk into dust. Add a little water to the dust to make a paste. Roll it into a shape of a piece of chalk. Let it dry. Now, making piece of chalk from chalk dust is an example of physical change. Activity 3. Take some ice in a tumbler. Melt the small portion of ice by placing the tumbler in the sun. Now you have the mixture of ice and water. Place the tumbler in the freezer. The water becomes solid ice once again. So the melting of ice is an example of physical change. Activity 4. Boil some water in a container. Do you see the steam rising from the surface of the water? Hold an inverted pan by its handle over the steam at some distance from the boiling water. Observe the inner surface of the pan. Do you see any droplets of water there? So boiling and condensation of water is an example of physical change. Activity 5. Heating of metal is an example of physical change.